Hey y'all, Bud Rednauer with New Haven Church and politics. Am I right? Corruption, fraud. I admit, the last few weeks, it's been pretty rough. I mean, the news, social media, you can't go anywhere. I mean, I see it coming from all over, and I do get it to a certain degree. But my fellow Christian, let me ask you, where is the focus of your heart right now? Do you take the spread of the gospel as seriously as your politics? There's nothing wrong with vocally supporting your candidate. And as Christians, I think that we need to be involved in politics as much as possible. But a great politician does not fulfill the Great Commission. So let me try to recalibrate our focus so that we can zero in on eternal things like Jesus did. Jesus didn't bother criticizing Rome because Rome was small potatoes compared to the kingdom that he ushered in. So let's turn to Scripture for guidance, specifically these 3 verses found in Titus 3, because anything less would simply be fake news. So let's start out here in Titus chapter 3, verse 1. Remind them to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient. So number 1, and this is going to sting a little bit, submit to rulers and authorities. Be obedient. Well, that was Paul like 2,000 years ago. You're way oversimplifying it. Now, if you say it's not that simple, then you're going to twist Scripture to make yourself feel better. First, you'll twist it, then you'll dismiss it. And do you think that Trump or Pelosi, Biden, whoever it is that you're arguing about online is worse than Rome was back in Paul's day? Read up and compare your oppression to that of the early church. And why are you so caught up in our government's ability to govern? It's not about their competence, it's about your obedience. Let's go back. Titus 3, verse 1. Remind them to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, ready for every good work. So number 2, we must be prepared for God to use us at any time. You see, when you're not practicing a submissive spirit, then you're not practicing a useful spirit. And I get it because these politicians are so, But submission and a humble spirit kind of go hand in hand, because without them, you have inflated pride because, you're not as bad as those corrupt politicians. And then you have a watered down view of your own sin. Your ego and the downplaying of your own sin is the opposite of being ready for every good work. I mean, you'll be ready for a work, it just won't be anything good. Your submission leads to obedience, which leads to God's ability to use you. And there is no greater honor or joy than being used by God for His good works. Now let's go back to verse 2. To speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, to have perfect courtesy toward all people. That's number 3. Remember that we are the light of the world. Matthew 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Guys, here's a suggestion. Let your Facebook posts be the light of the world, bringing encouragement, joy, relief, good news, aka the gospel. Because Facebook posts are like cities set on a hill and that they ain't hidden. It's kind of the whole point in a post. Well, let's just back up here real quick and take it one by one. Okay, to speak evil of no one. That means no one. Democrats, Republicans, Californians. I get it. I've done it. It's super easy to do. Next, to avoid quarreling. Okay, you light of the world, you. Do you honestly feel happier after spending an entire day debating a friend of a friend online? Let me ask you this. Did you make it easier to share Jesus with that person in the future? Or did you kind of lose credibility? We are called to engage the world, but not engage it for political reasons or at the expense of our call to be the light of the world. Be gentle and show perfect courtesy toward all people, not with just those whom you agree or toward those who vote like you, who look like you, or I'll even say it, behave like you, but toward all people. Don't be so caught up in making a point, but rather in making a difference as the light of the world. And now in verse 3, Paul goes on to give the explanation why. For because we ourselves were once foolish, disobedient, led astray. And he goes on to list a bunch of other qualities that we have attributed to the politicians in Washington, D.C. And verse 3 ends with, hated by others and hating one another. Is there any better summation of Washington, D.C. than that? And now listen to this. The only difference between them and us is that we have experienced the grace of God. Number 4, the grace of God is the difference maker between the lost and the found. And starting in verse 4, Paul goes on to say that it was due to the goodness and kindness of God that He chose to save you and me. Not because you or I did something that made Him so happy to choose us, but it was according to His own mercy. And remembering this truth should instill in us a humble spirit which creates the perfect environment for God to use us to advance His kingdom, which is, after all, our commandment. So I just want to remind you, let's not lose sight of what God has called us to do by getting caught up in things that will pass with the next election. For more information, you can reach us at newhavenbc.com, facebook.com/newhavenbc. And for more videos like this or our Sunday sermons, check us out on YouTube.